I think for a lot of teams out there, it's all about just getting the practice in as much as possible, particularly around the maneuvers. We've seen quite a few crew changes. USA have a new strategist on board. The Swiss team have also mixed it up with a new wing trimmer. So it's going to be a lot about finding out all the little differences with each of these new sailors on board.
And Stevie, protecting home waters, that is the job for the Kiwis right now, and they bring an all-star crew.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the talented lineup on board that boat there. You know, Pete Burling and Blair Tuke, well, they're probably two of the biggest sporting names in New Zealand with their success at the Olympics. They carried the flag at the Rio Olympic Games for New Zealand. So, yeah, huge pressure on them, but I think this crew, they're used to wearing that load fairly lightly, and they'll just be excited to get things up and running. Disappointing event in Sydney that's made things a little bit closer for them as a season point, and let's not lose sight of that. This is pinch point in the season. Yes, Australia are in good shape, but people like Great Britain, they're in 4th place at the moment. They're not in that grand final as it stands, and Ben Ainsley, that's just not somewhere he's really used to being. Ben Ainsley, Hannah Mills, two of the most, well, the two most decorated Olympic sailors of all time. They need to pull a big performance out this weekend.
Great Britain currently sitting in 4th and 61 points. That's 2 back of 3rd in France, who was on 63 points. Remember, to Stevie's point, after San Francisco's 5 races in the fleet, only the top 3 will race off for the $1 million grand finale. And that will determine who is the champion. We just had a chance to talk with Nikolai Sehested, Stevie. They've got some good consistency they've built over the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, I think this team, they always talk about the process, and they've really built that. They've shown great form, great results. But for me, process needs to go out the window now in terms of consistency. They need to tweak the risk level up a bit. They need to come away from here with certainly a top 3 finish, if not an event win. And then they're going to be very much in the hunt going into San Fran.
Denmark still in it, 57 points, 19 down of the overall, the top 3 right now. So you got to think the cut line is at 63 points. Great Britain on 61, Denmark on 57, and then USA on 52. But you still hear hope in the voice of Jimmy Spittle, thinking they could still make that grand final.
Well, Jimmy Spittle's a bit of an optimist, Todd. I mean, you can't fault him. He's used to fighting with his back to the wall. But for me, they're a little bit out of the equation. I think it's Denmark and up. But yeah, my eyes really here are on New Zealand, France and Great Britain. I think that's the thing. We've got a minute to go here, and this pre-race start now, absolutely crucial, the positioning at this time. The crews won't have had many practice runs at this. We can see the wind's superb out there on the water, and that starting box is very small. Australia, they look very early back here, but the French and Great Britain, well, their timing looks a little bit off. They could be struggling at this time.
Race number 1 set to go at the ITM New Zealand Sail Grand Prix here in Christchurch as SailGP comes to New Zealand for the first time.
Slingsby on board Australia. He's controlling things there. We see the blue mark indicating the pole position, the favoured place to start. USA, they've got space here. It's Australia with space, USA with space. Who's got their timing right? USA dives behind the Kiwi boat here. Burling, classic start. How's his timing though as Quentin de la Pierre on board the French boat lines things up? It's a straight sprint to the line now. Watch for the line to turn white, and we're going to be racing here in Christchurch. Perfect start by Canada there, Todd. They've led things away. Phil Robertson, a Kiwi, racing on home waters as well. He's driving that French boat hard, and I think he should be able to get around the French by Mark 1.
Still overlap. Kept coming up a little. Coming up. Gonna go around here. Coming down 2. 1, let's go.
Calm voice of Phil Robertson at mark number 1. So the 2-time World Match Racing Tour champion, Robertson, back on home waters, and it's the Canadians that take the early lead here on the first race.
There we go on board Great Britain. They're first to turn away. New Zealand also at the back of the pack. And it's the French. They managed to go so fast on that downwind leg. There, the yellow line. That's the mark, the line that tells us they can make it to the next gate in 1. French are in control of things here, and it's going to get tight on the boundary, Todd. Everyone needs to watch out. Who's got the clear shot into gate 2?
Leg 2 of 7, race number 1. Remember, the French coming off a 3-peat performance in Sydney, where they won all 3 races on Saturday.
Definitely lined up here, Quentin de la Pierre, and they are fast on board that French boat. Look at the speed, over 80 kilometres an hour, heading straight at gate 2. Brilliant performance there, but back in the pack, New Zealand and Great Britain, work to do if they're going to start chasing down this French team. And Tom Slingsby's Australia settling in 3rd behind Phil Robertson. Has Australia got the room inside? It's really tight.
dips the nose, and Australia comes in, same issue.
Great Britain, he's going around the outside here. He must give room to Switzerland. The Swiss, oh, they're out of control. They snuggle around as well. It's a tight race here. What a moment. The French, though, they lead away, and New Zealand back in the hunt after the action at gate 2. They were smooth on board the Kiwi boat, and they've got it going fast. They're going to be right back in the race as we head upwind.
2 legs of 7 complete. It is France out in front, Australia, Canada, Denmark, New Zealand, Great Britain, Switzerland, Spain, and surprising to see the USA back in 9th.
Those distances open out so quickly there, Todd, but it's New Zealand. They found space. Burling was right at the back of the pack. He's showing us 4th now, just 84 metres behind the French. They're on home turf, and well, they've done a fantastic job of getting themselves back in the race here now, and that New Zealand boat looks fast.
Brilliant speeds by the French here, 56 kilometres an hour. The Aussies slightly further back in the pack are slower, 51 kilometres per hour speed here. Really pushing, trying to stay up in the fours. We've got 30 k/h breeze, which means the boats really can push, and the French once again dominant in that breeze.
Look at the ride height on the top left of the screen. We can see the French boat flying beautifully out of the water, very steady. We can see the number not changing much, but New Zealand, wow, they look fast here. The ladder lines here, that shows us a relative position up the racetrack. They're neck and neck with Australia, 2nd and 3rd, and these are the class of the fleet. France were perfect in Sydney. Right now, De La Pierre, perfect, as we're into race 1 here in Christchurch.
Have not missed a beat, and there are some teams out there, Stevie, that need these points. They cannot dig themselves a hole on day number 1. Remember, it's 3 races today, 2 more tomorrow.
Here we go, tight cross here. Australia, they have the right of way. And Canada, New Zealand's got to be accurate here. Burling's pushing it. We're going to hear from Craig Mitchell, I'm sure. Tight cross, I think New Zealand's clear ahead. But wow, that was so tight. Top of screen, Great Britain, they now have the right of way as we approach gate 3. It's a real fight for the podium places behind the French crew.
Gate number 3, France will be the first ones to get there, and now the battle for 2nd place is on. Right now it's the Kiwis, Australia's in 3rd, and Emirates GBR in 4th. Another tight spot here as 3 teams opt for the right-hand side.
Oh, it's so tight here, Todd, but that was an absolute masterclass from New Zealand on that upwind leg. They found space, they found good wind, and they moved from 6th to 2nd through the quality of this fleet. That was absolutely clinical, and they're back within 12 seconds of the French.
Switzerland, 1 spot ahead of the Americans.
So the French in that previous leg, we see them with the highest average speed, 53 kilometres an hour, but the Kiwis sailed less distance, 1.98 kilometres versus that just over 2. Both doing the same amount of manoeuvres, so this is really showing the different modes that the 2 boats are sailing. The French sailing wider angles, higher speeds, the Kiwis sailing closer to the wind and shorter distance.
See here, look at Contam looking around. He's got his eyes out the back of the boat there. That's Maëlle Frascari on the back of the boat, her first day on an F50 as well. And these through posts in the way here, that is an obstruction. The crews aren't allowed through there, so another little treat for the teams out here on the water in New Zealand. And we can see on the ladder line there, well, it's a big gap opening up already. This French crew, if you get them out in front, as Emily said, they know how to sail the boat very fast.
We've seen a couple of penalties pop up there from the Swiss and USA. They just went outside the boundary.
Penalty, that's a 20-metre loss they're going to have to take, Todd. It's just an unforced error, generally speaking, and it just means this leading group's getting further and further ahead. As a right turn for New Zealand, Tom Slingsby on board Australia thinks he's seen something different, though. It looks a little loose on board Australia, and he's making a few mistakes, very uncharacteristic.
So the Danes follow the Aussies, as do Canada. Remember, Canada was in 2nd place after the first mark. They now sit in 6th place. Everyone's scrambling for points. As we've seen in past races, if you finish in a 7, 8, and 9 on race number 1, it's almost impossible to come back and make that top 3.
Still sounds pretty calm on board Australia, but he's not going to like to see the speed of that New Zealand boat. It's stretching away. Remember, Kiwis were way behind on that first upwind leg, but they found a way. They're minimising distance. They're back to 125 metres behind the French. but Delapierre has good control here as we see Great Britain and Australia right of way with Australia, but I think the Brits have got a good wind shift. We can see they're nearly sailing straight up the ladder line, so they're minimising the distance they need to sail, but they've got to watch out for Australia.
And Emirates GBR just clear of the Aussies, so Great Britain moves into third. The Australians move into fourth. They are the overall leaders on the series at 76 points, 12 points clear of the Kiwis, who now sit in second.
Here we go, it's going to be tight here. So when the French turn the boat the next time, New Zealand will have the right of way. And to my eye, that Kiwi boat is either picking good wind shifts or he's sailing the boat faster. But when Delapierre tacks here, turns the boat through the wind, New Zealand now have the right of way. It's going to be tight. Delapierre needs to be certain he can make gate 5, and he needs to be certain he's clear.
And as the French approach gate number 5, we want to remind you the fan-owned SailGP team built on Near has open subscriptions, which gives an opportunity to all fans to become a team owner.
The speeds we're seeing on these boats right now are neck and neck. France are averaging 58 kilometers an hour, New Zealand 57.5. So they really are pushing the boats right to the limit.
Well, we've got a split here, so the French have turned right, New Zealand heading back towards the flans here. This is leg six of 7. This is, oh my word, it's a tight moment here. Canada have the right of way, and Denmark, last minute turn. There will be a protest, I imagine a penalty there for the Danes, but the Canadians are safely round. That was so tight there.
Holding high. Coming up.
Look how tight this race course is, Todd. You can hear there Phil Robertson. He's watching out for the Americans. They're trying to look out for boats on the other leg of the course. And we're heading here down to gate 6, and then it's just a sprint to the finish. And the French, well, they're stretching out, but have the Kiwis, who are to the right-hand side of our screen, managed to find a little bit of extra wind to get themselves chasing that French boat down.
Wind speed holding right around 28 kilometers an hour. It's the French out in front. They have a massive lead here with half a leg to go. It'll be at gate number 6, then the turn to the finish in front of the fans here. A sold-out crowd here in Christchurch. France, New Zealand, Australia, Great Britain, the top 4.
Okay, interesting moment here, Todd. That's the finish line we're flying over now. France are about to turn right. Normally you'd be able to easily head straight to the finish, but I think this could be tight. It's going to be interesting to see if the French can make it in one. Don't be surprised, to see a left turn from New Zealand and then an early turn towards the finish. It's one more manoeuvre for New Zealand, 2 more manoeuvres for France. There's a chance here, different upwind leg to the finish than we've ever seen before. France execute that manoeuvre well. New Zealand will have the right of way, but I think it's going to be too little too late. Delapierre still in control.
Further back in the fleet, we've got Australia following in the footsteps of the French, and same with Great Britain.
And there it is, the final maneuver for the French, Stevie. It was very clean, a very tricky course to wrap things up. And once again, just like in Sydney, Australia, here in New Zealand, the French draw first blood.
Wow, 4 races in a row if you go back to Sydney there, Todd. Impressive stuff. I think there was a bit of bad language, unfortunately, just a moment ago, so we'll apologise for that. And the New Zealand crew, well, that is a solid comeback. Very poor start. They'll be easily looking to make improvements on that, but that New Zealand boat looks fast to sail through the fleet like that. And Ainsley, look at him. He's cut the corner on Slingsby. That's a point gained by the British crew. 2 quick turns, and Slingsby opened the door. Ainsley not one to avoid jumping through it. 3rd for Great Britain, 4th for Australia.
And everyone trying to get the points. Canada, who had a great start, will finish in 5th place. And it'll be a quick turnaround as the Canadians come through. Look at Switzerland having a pretty decent run here today. And they will finish in 6th.
Yeah, it's tight though. Look,
or maybe not. Look at this.
In front of Denmark there. Wow, the Danes. Wow, how costly could that be in terms of the season as a whole? They were in that battle with New Zealand and Great Britain, and they dropped right back. And talking of dropping right back, well, USA, disappointing. He's got to get through by the Spanish.
Got him.
I think he did get him, Todd, but an 8th place, that is not going to do it for this US team.
So race number 1 is in the books, and once again, France has taken the victory. New Zealand finishing in 2nd, and Great Britain on points sits in 3rd.
And this start box is small, so they're already in their pre-race run-up.
Coming up on 1 minute to go before the start of race number 2. Race 1 went the way of the French.
On board Delapierre. He was late in last time. He likes that. We saw that the end of the start line in the middle of our screen on the right-hand side, that was the favoured place to be. It's a short run to Mark 1, so you want to be on the inside of the turn, and there you go. There's our data analytics showing us that pole position. All the crews quite late turning back here, and I think the French, Australia and perhaps New Zealand are well timed at the moment, but it is now going to be very, very tight at the bottom of that line. Who can find the space? Australia. Cross ahead there, they have good controlling position. Denmark and France look in good shape. Burling, we've seen this story before, out the back, up and foiling with 20 seconds to go on board New Zealand. Charging in here, big run at this from New Zealand, and it's going to be Australia with the precision start near pole position. Burling on board New Zealand, trying to get his timing right. Has he got room to get in at the start line? I think it's going to be Australia and France coming out the middle of the line with the best start here. How's your timing on the line? All clear there for me, and it's going to be Australia in a brilliant position down towards the bottom end, but the fastest boat on the course at the moment is New Zealand. Can they roll round the front of the fleet?
At mark number 1 of race 2, it is the Kiwis and the Aussies out in front, with Tom Slingsby and the Australians, the 2-time reigning and defending champions, who get the whole shot.
Oh, Australia were perfect, and the New Zealand boat was so fast. The Canadians got in on the inside there, though. They're going to be holding the New Zealand crew up, and that gate 2, it's looming large already. But for New Zealand and Australia, they're going to be pretty happy with the picture they see right now. Let's see how they execute the manoeuvre on board Australia. Beautiful manoeuvre by the Australians there, and they're well set up for gate 2. New Zealand as well in space, and look how tight it is in the pack here. Switzerland and Spain nearly on top each other at the back of the race. 2 new drivers on board there. Diego Botan, just his 2nd event on that Spanish crew. Well, he's at the back, but it's really tight as we see Australia and New Zealand. It's a serious drag race, and New Zealand, look at the speed, 65 kilometres an hour.
Canada not slow either, almost 70 kilometres an hour on the top of their wing mast there.
It looks like they're going to split the course.
Yeah, we are going to get a split here. New Zealand opting to not follow Australia. There'll be turbulent wind if you follow behind Australia. That will slow you down. So New Zealand, they're hoping to find a shorter course or more wind by turning right at the bottom there. And in the gate here, it's really tight. Spain, my lord, that was so close with the French. Won't be surprised to see a penalty there on board the Spanish. Great avoiding action by the French. And Spain, it's a little bit loose out on Littleton Harbour.
Plenty of excitement out there. At the moment, we've got the Australians on the right-hand side of the course, the Kiwis on the left, coming back together now. But the breeze across the course is pretty similar. 50 kilometres an hour out on the right-hand side. Boat speed, 60 kilometres an hour currently for the Kiwis. Both averaging 30 kilometres an hour of wind speed.
And you hear the tacticians on board Australia and New Zealand watching each other, seeing what they're doing. It's Australia and New Zealand. That's 1 and 2 in the overall standings, and they are going at it here in race number 2.
Right of way with Australia. New Zealand, he chooses to dip behind. It was a big avoiding action by the Kiwis, but when they meet back up in about 30 seconds' time, it will be New Zealand with the right of way. So a short-term loss for Burling. Will it be a long-term gain?
Leg 3 of 7. The French look like their winning ways may come to an end here on race number 2 as they sit in 7th place. The Americans sitting good right now, Stevie, in 5th place. They need the points badly, and the Danes up into 4th, just 1 spot behind Canada.
I think there's nothing in it. You could throw a blanket over the middle of the fleet when we get up to gate 3 here, Todd. It's going to be a really, really tight battle with, well, the 2 people we see as the main protagonists for this season 3 in SailGP. Starboard tack, wind coming over the right-hand side of the boat for New Zealand, and they're sailing parallel with that yellow ley line. That means they're going to make gate 3 with no more manoeuvres. Australia, wind coming over the left-hand side. Right of way with New Zealand. Australia needs to be very, very confident in this next decision.
As they approach gate number 3 here in race number 2, this is leg 3 of 7. And look at the Kiwis and the Aussies coming together. Who's going to blink first?
Australia's got to go behind. It's going to be really tight for the Australian crew. Slingsby's done that before, though, and he manages still neck and neck at gate 3. There's nothing in it. The top 2 boats in the fleet are going hammer and tong here, and Canada third once again. It's really tight. 0-second difference between Australia and New Zealand. What a race.
Great work.
They're encouraging his Canadian crew in third position at the moment. Nice gap on fourth, and they really need to hold on to this position here, Todd. But Great Britain, 9th place. This is a nightmare for the British crew. He needs to fire himself up through the fleet very quickly. Tight with Switzerland. Their Swiss needed to keep clear.
So New Zealand, which finished in second in race number 1, now have the lead in race number 2.
Looking back at the boats at the front of the fleet now, we've got Australia, New Zealand and Canada all pushing 100% fly time as they head down to that bottom gate. Average speeds around 60, 61 kilometres an hour, with the Kiwis still just having the lead.
Managed to put that manoeuvre in just ahead of Australia. If they get an overlap here, the Kiwis are going to have to keep clear. It's really tight. It's just coming down to small details in manoeuvres here, Todd. The tactics are really, really close with each other. What's Australia going to do? Looks like a following manoeuvre from the Aussies. Perhaps a JK coming up here. Expect a turn, and then a turn through the wind. Oh, it was an aggressive move on the... Kiwis are pushing it so hard, but a big mistake by Australia. Tried to find and force an error, but he pushed an error on himself.
And the Canadians also dip as they come around.
Set-piece manoeuvre that, Todd, where you turn up round the mark, straight into a turn, and disaster for Australia. They fell off the foils, they're going to have lost a lot of distance, and look at the Danish boat. They've run wide, the crews are struggling out here.
We do know that right now, you know, the 32 kilometres an hour of wind that they're sailing into currently, the tide is going in the opposite direction. Now, when we have this situation of wind against tide, that creates a lot of chop, which, as we're seeing, is making the flight controllers' lives a little bit difficult.
Here are the French winners of race number 1, now sitting in 8th place.
That kind of race course, Todd, if you don't get to Mark 1 in good shape, it's really hard. But New Zealand, look, they've got a great wind. The wind shifters turn to the left. They're on the left-hand side of the course. That's great news for the New Zealand crew here. This will be a big, big lead with the wind shift as it sits at the moment. They were nearly sailing straight up the ladder lines, progressing towards gate 3 really quickly. Massive advantage for Burling and New Zealand.
And they must have intercepted Lisa Darmano's reports from down on the water. She says the wind has gone left, so there's a little funnel down the shore. So we'll see if it holds on for the Kiwis. The Australians sit in second, Canada in third, the USA now up to 4th. Leg 5 of 7, race number 2 was still another race to go here on day number 1 of the ITM New Zealand Sail Grand Prix in Christchurch in beautiful Littleton Harbour.
Hill line in the background, that's packed with spectators as well here, and they're going to love what they see. A hometown hero, New Zealand, leading the way here to this gate. They're going to turn the boats away downwind. Expect massive acceleration as they turn the boats away from the wind. But it's a big gain here for Burling and his crew, and it should be just a case of delivering the boat to the finish from here, because this is a big lead.
Stevie, remember how tricky that finish is, though. Who does this favor as they split the course?
It's such a big lead. Burling can do what he wants.
Gonna go fast and go right.
Okay.
Gonna go fast. I like the sound of that.
Certainly are by the numbers I'm seeing. 70 kilometres an hour average on the previous leg. That was the last downwind leg towards that bottom gate, while the Kiwis are slightly slower, but yet again sailing shorter distance.
Lisa said the marked wind had turned to the left. That would favour the left turn. It should be less distance sailed for all the boats doing a left turn here. So it's a bit of a roll of the dice for Slingsby here. I don't think he would lose second, but he's lost a lot of distance with that manoeuvre relative to the Kiwis. So it should make this final leg to the finish a bit easier for the New Zealand boat.
And everyone fighting for points here on the second race of 3. It's all about getting to the top 3 so you can race in the final race on Sunday. The Kiwis have control of this one. Their lead over 250 meters over the Australians. Canada sitting in third, the USA in fourth. And Stevie, it's down to the next gate and then that tricky maneuver to the finish line.
Yeah, it's a tricky final leg to get the boats back in under the fans on the shoreline. Great view for the fans, but it certainly gives a bit of thinking time to the other crews out there. But New Zealand, well, they're doing a great job.
Impressive sailing by the Kiwis. Mark 1, they were in third. They have moved up the fleet to first, but really good by Canada as well. They were sixth at Mark 1 after not the best start and did as well move up to third. Just shows how much can change at all of these gate marks.
So they're down through the final gate, and now they have to configure and figure out how the best way is to get to that finish line. And Steve, it looks like they're going to be able to lay right in.
Todd, your eyes in today. Yeah, it's a little bit of a turn in the wind. The wind's now turned to the right. This sort of environment with the hills all around, the wind's constantly shifting, and right now it's a beautiful picture for the New Zealand boat as they're going to bring it home.
And coming across the line is the Kiwis. The Kiwi team takes the win in race number 2.
Big for the crowd on the shore absolutely loving that out there, and we can see the wind dropping right off near the shore. Australia off the foils. I think they'll just manage to sneak across the line in second. Another good result for the Australians. And Canada, well, yeah, they've gained places in this, which they really needed to, because they lost a lot of boats in race 1, but Phil Robertson, he's going to be encouraged. That Canadian boat's moving through the fleet well, and we can see behind it's tight.
Great umpires, USA boundary penalty.
Oh, and the Americans were sitting in 4th, and they will now drop back, losing that position of 4th to Great Britain.
20-metre loss there. Good result on board Canada. They'll be happy. No, there's still plenty to work on board the boat there. But yeah, Great Britain, another 4th. What a comeback. Remember, 1 lap ago, they were last. So when the pressure was on, they found a bit of space. It got going quickly. Those points could be absolutely crucial. As we can see, the French, they'd looked infallible for the last few events, but sat in 6th at the moment. Going to start to get a few questions on that French boat, maybe.
And the Americans go up to 5th, so they've got an 8th and a 5th, so they're trending in the right direction. But boy, they could have used that extra point, Stevie. They could have gotten 4th ahead of Great Britain.
Yeah, look at the French. There's an error on board the French. First time we've heard it heated for a few events on board the French boat there. And I think this gusty, changeable wind, it's really challenging the crews. Not a lot of practice time. How can you keep the boats calm, and how can you keep the boats sailing smoothly? Sailing smoothly.
Switzerland comes through as they finish in 7th. So 1 back from what they did in race number 1, a 6 and a 7 for the Swifts. There you see the Danes trying to figure this thing out. What a conundrum, as the Danes will take 8th.
It just shows that, I mean, that's the great thing about the sport, really. The wind, the course is always changing a little bit as the wind shifts. If you remember, New Zealand did it in 1 manoeuvre.
Right.
The wind's changed direction a little bit. Suddenly you've got to do it in 2. The crews have got to be thinking. They've got to be responding and reacting all the time. It's not a simple racetrack. It's always evolving.
And Spain comes home in 9th. So back-to-back 9th place finishes for Diego Botín, his 2nd race here after racing in Sydney. And what a race. Race number 2 is now complete. Coming up on 2:30 to go for the 3rd and final race here in Christchurch, beautiful Littleton Harbour. And talk about a beautiful part of the world. We talk about the Impact League and what it means to SailGP racing for the future. We get a message from Roberts.
The course for race 3 is 7 legs. The course axis is 080. Wind is approximately 28 kilometers per hour.
So very similar to what we saw in race number 2, as we are now on 2 minutes to go here in season 3 of SailGP. This is event number 10, and remember, the grand finale coming up in about 7 weeks' time, May 6th and 7th. It'll be the Mubadala SailGP season 3 grand final in San Francisco, California.
Oh yeah, Todd, you talk about the Impact League. We're here in New Zealand. This is a first time trialling some new automated race marks. They're
Right.
at gate 2. They're out there on the water first time at the ITM New Zealand Sail Grand Prix. They've been developed by SailGP Technologies, and it just means we can move our whole course around. They're powered, by nature, solar powered, batteries out there, keeping the marks in position, and could be a real breakthrough for our racing.
All about leaving a negative carbon footprint in this beautiful part of the world.
But it also prevents us using anchors, which means the seabeds are left undisturbed.
All right, 1:15 to go for the 3rd and final race here. Remember, 2 more races tomorrow before the big final. That's the top 3 boats will only be racing in that one. Stevie, this is definitely go time. You'd love to end day number 1 with a high, with a win. So teams down at the bottom, teams like the USA, maybe Swiss, Denmark, Spain, big time for them to go.
Big time. I mean, what caught my eye, Todd, was the fact that the top 4 overall in the season standings are the top 4 after 2 races here in New Zealand. This is an aggressive move, a different strategy from Burling. He talked about wanting to get to the end of the line that's in the middle of our screen, what we'd call the downwind end of the line. That would give you the inside run at Mark 1. Burling's changed his strategy up. Jimmy Spittle's changed it up to the left-hand side as well. But who's got it right? as per usual, Australia, they're leading back. He loves having that control.
Boundary penalty, New Zealand.
Oh, wow. Unforced error. That is not the change of strategy you want. New Zealand are going to have to start behind the fleet. That's crucial here, but here we go. Australia, Great Britain and Denmark, they're in a good position at the moment. We're lining up. Australia heading well in for the bottom of the line. It's going to be Australia or USA. Here they come. Let's watch Jimmy Spittle on board USA. He winds it up. 7 seconds to go. How's your timing, Jimmy Spittle? Line's going to turn white. Perfect timing there by Phil Robertson and Canada again, but the USA coming in like a raging bull towards Mark 1. Is he going to be fast enough to get round the top?
80 kilometers an hour of boat speed for Team USA at the start though.
It's a raging pit bull for Jimmy Spithill as he is looking to grab hold of a win here to wrap up day number 1. It's the Canadians that make the turn first. France also diving underneath the Americans, but the Americans have a lot of speed and they put themselves in a great position.
Great position, Todd, but they're on the outside of the wheel as they go round here, and they're now totally controlled by those 3 boats inside. They must keep clear. They must wait for those boats to turn first. Jimmy Spittle's in a tight position now, and it's going to be Canada leading the fleet away. Australia have already split away, and we'll see how that works out for them on the run down to gate 2. But right now, things should be easy for Canada as Ben Ainsley's Emirates GBR. They need to see if they can split the fleet up and work their way back up the course. As New Zealand, look at the speed on the Kiwi boat. They were last after that start. The ladder line shows them in second nearly at the moment. They'll have the right of way when they come back together with the rest of the fleet here. Here we go. Great Britain must keep clear. France, you've got to be confident you're ahead. Delapierre's not confident, turns the boat, and it's going to be tight at gate 2. How are the New Zealand boat doing this, Todd? They're so fast.
Dead last off the line, and now the Kiwis are in play.
Got to give room to the French. He does give room, but as soon as they leave that yellow circle, Delapierre must keep clear. Expect an aggressive move by Burling here. He's going to rotate the boat up towards the French as the fleet split away, and it's Denmark off the foils. That could be disaster. As the French, they turn, but they've got to... Oh, big mistake by Delapierre. He turned the boat straight into Australia. There's going to be a penalty there, surely.
This is the umpires. Penalty France, relative Australia. Vortec boat not keeping clear.
So Craig Mitchell doling out the penalty to the French as they will have to drop back. And now we have got a race on our hands. The final race of the day here at the ITM New Zealand Sail Grand Prix in Christchurch. Perfect conditions. This is an opportunity, Steve, for other boats to pick up some points. And right now, it's Phil Robertson in Canada in control.
Well, it is, and I think you can see here the dark patches of water. Well, New Zealand ran out of wind there as we're going to come back on board the French. We're looking on board the French. He turns the boat, but he's not looked over his shoulder at the Australians, and suddenly they realise, oh no, we're going to have a problem coming fairly soon. He rounds up on the inside of the mark here. They're trying to set up to turn away from New Zealand, but in doing so, they turn straight into Australia. Unforced error for me, that one. And it's Canada and Great Britain, big gainers out of that, as there's more wind on that side of the course where New Zealand are heading now.
Canada at the lead still with 63 kilometers an hour of average speed. The British are slightly slower, slightly less fly time, but Canada showing us how it's done.
Canada, Great Britain, Australia, New Zealand top 4. Switzerland's in 5th. France now into 6th place, 1 spot ahead of the Americans.
It's good to see Canada learning through the day here. They're getting faster and faster. They should still lead here at gate 3, but New Zealand, they just don't go away, do they? Our ladder lines showing us how tight it is. The right of ways with New Zealand and Australia. Canada, you want to be pretty confident you're clear ahead here.
Hearing from Lisa Darmanin out on the water, she says right turn now looking favored at the next gate. That's gate number 3.
Right turn favoured. That's good news for Canada. But, well, New Zealand, they drop behind the British boat, but now the British are going to have to dip behind New Zealand and Australia here, and the Kiwis are right in the hunt. I mean, this boat, they are flying out here on Littleton Harbour.
New Zealand not needing any more help right now as they've got a 2nd and a 1st, and they are looking for another 1st to put a stranglehold on this one as we go down on the water to get a first-hand report from Lisa Darmanin.
Well, I don't think the teams can bank on anything they learned in the last leg. It's definitely changing a lot out here, and they're going to have to be adaptable. I think the next gate, when we see the right-hand turn, that's dangerous. There's not a lot of wind where we see that big grandstand. So if I was a team out there, I would be avoiding that light wind patch and heading out towards those spectator boats.
Here we go, that's a good call. I think it paid really on that last upwind leg to be away from the shoreline. It was the Canadians that went that way. New Zealand got a bit stuck under the shore, and are now big gain for the Canadians. Look how fast the New Zealand boats moved away from Australia. As Ainsley, he has the right of way, and Slingsby drop backs to fourth.
Quick throwback to that previous leg shows just how Canada kept that lead, 54 km/h average speed. The Kiwis again, slightly shorter distance. We really are seeing these modes play into their strengths today.
Stevie, it's got to be a nervous time right now for the French. After winning the first race, they now pick up a 6th in race number 2, and they're sitting in 7th in race number 3. Remember, they don't have a lot of wiggle room because they're 1 point behind New Zealand in the overall and only 2 points out of that top 3 spot with Great Britain.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big players have come out to play here, haven't they? And the Canadians are doing a fantastic job. But when we think of the season as a whole, this is a great result for New Zealand as it is at the moment, and a good result for Great Britain as we see New Zealand have to turn the boat away. It's tight in the pack. France are back in the game there, chasing down Jimmy Spithill, and it's the Australians, the big losers on that downwind leg. They were so close to New Zealand, but they had a tight cross, had to dip behind Great Britain, and all of a sudden that's lost them from third place, back to 6th.
And the first-time visit to New Zealand has not been kind to the Danes. They were sitting 5th overall in the standings, but they have come out with a 7th and 8th, and right now they are sitting in dead last in 9th.
That's Phil Robertson planning ahead. He's 2 or 3 moves ahead. I think you can do that when you're in first place. He's talking about trying to do a left turn at the top and then manoeuvre the boat away from that shore as soon as possible. He's got Isabella Bertol behind him there, giving him the strategy, helping him with that big picture. Of course, if you're in the strategist role, you've perhaps got that little bit more time to look out, as we see. No need to look here. Aggressive match race manoeuvre by New Zealand. He doesn't want to give Ainsley an inch. Burling sticks it straight in his face as they're coming upwind now. All the big move away by Great Britain. He will protest here, I'd imagine. Turbulent wind going on to the British crew at the moment, and we should start to see the British boats slow down here relative to New Zealand. They're hanging in there well.
Look at the speed dropping on Canada out in front, but their speed came down all the way to 36 km/h. Meanwhile, Great Britain and New Zealand picking up the pace.
Expect a simultaneous manoeuvre here. Great Britain will look to turn, but Burling will slam the door shut in his face, was my guess. And they're going to come back together at this final gate. Looks like good news for Canada as Great Britain and New Zealand are in a bit of a fight.
Look who else has joined the party. The Americans now up to 4th.
Basically broken one side of the rudder wing, so we got that one like we did last time.
Wow. So there's some elevators on the bottom of the rudder there. It's obviously got some slight structural issues with it, which will make the boat feel, well, it's going to struggle to fly, but it's also going to feel very unstable there. That's why Slingsby's going backwards very, very quickly through the fleet here. Going forward through the fleet quickly. Well, it's Burling and New Zealand, and when he meets up with the Canadians at the bottom of this leg, he's going to have the right of way. So, who can find the most wind on this final downwind leg?
Tom Slingsby can afford maybe a stinker here, Stevie, because he had a 4th in race number 1, a 2nd in race number 2, so he's got good points. But if he can salvage a 7th or 8th of this one with a broken boat, that's going to be huge.
He can also afford a bit of a stinker because he's some 12 points ahead of the 2nd place boat in the season's points. But Tom Slingsby's brain doesn't work like that. He wants to be winning.
And you certainly don't want to be losing a race because of broken equipment.
You don't want to come to New Zealand and lose to the Kiwis.
No, that is absolutely sure.
Back up at the front, though, the Canadians are still leading the way and stretching that lead even further as they head back out to the middle of the course where there is more breeze.
Pressure on this last manoeuvre. Looks like they've nailed it.
So this is like 6 of 7, 3rd and final race of the day here at the ITM New Zealand Sail Grand Prix in Christchurch, and this will be critical as they come through this last gate. We've seen it tricky before. Now they have altered slightly, Stevie, the finish line here, so it might not be as hard as it has been on the first 2 races, but now Phil Robertson's got company in the form of Peter Burling.
Company, but we heard him say right turn straight in, so Robertson's confident. It sounds calm on board the Canadian boat, and they've done a great job. Let's be honest, they went from 1st to about 6th in race 1. They didn't look like they were sailing the boat well at all, and here they've had the informed New Zealand crew chasing them down, and they've held them off.
And in race number 3, it is the Crazy Canucks. The Canadians come to New Zealand and get the win. They claim race 3, 1 spot ahead of New Zealand, and Great Britain, they're moving in the right direction. They finish in 3rd.
Jimmy Spithill, he needed a good result, and De La Pierre, after that massive mistake, he's managed to get a 5th out of this. Good news for the French crew to get themselves in the game. Jimmy, well, he'll be happy with this result, but it's not going to be the day he wanted when you think of the season as a whole.
So the Americans have 2 5s on the day, but that 8th in the first race is really going to cost them.
New Zealand fans, what a great day to be a Kiwi fan. It was a bit of a masterclass as we see Switzerland coming across the line there in 6th. I think they'll be happy. They got themselves right in the fight there. They've got Glenn Ashby on wind trim at this event, who, of course, a big favourite in New Zealand. One of probably the great sailors on the planet coming to join the Swiss team. He'll be bringing a lot of experience on board there. And a good result for Diego Botin on board the Spanish boat. Tough conditions. He's had a really tough start to his F50 campaign, but that Spanish boat's going quicker.
Not the day one the Danes were looking for. Nikolai Sehested, they are in the hunt for the overall, currently 5th overall. But they've got to have some company now as they are on 57 points with the Americans breathing down their necks. And Australia brings that boat home. Remember, damage on board, a 9th for the 2-time reigning and defending champions.
Well, we'll get a bit of a review from the Australians as to what exactly has happened to their rudder winglets. Certainly not ideal, but the boat was foiling in well there, so hopefully something they can get on top of overnight. But yeah, Tom Slingsby's not going to like that, finishing in front of a New Zealand crowd.
So today's going to be all about working those out, getting their comms back to normal, and giving the Kiwis a run for their money.
And this is a sensitive area, Stevie, so they have not had a lot of time to practice. Normally they get a day or two before, multiple hours, but that has not been the case today because of mammal sightings. So they have got limited time to get things squared away here in Littleton Harbor.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's the same for everyone though, Todd. They've all been in a very similar position.
The course for race 4 is 7 legs. The course axis is 080. Wind is approximately 27 kilometers per hour.
Just coming back to that point though, Todd, what's interesting is I think we are getting to the pinch point of the season here.
Yeah.
And Tom Slingsby's interview, he's worried about the Kiwis. So I think today that could be a story. You know, we've got that finals not far away now, and the Kiwis do look like the best team. And talking about that final, pressure's on this boat. Can't think there's much more pressure than on Ben Ainsley and his crew, really. They had a decent day yesterday, but they're still behind the French in the overalls. And for him to miss the final would be almost unthinkable.
Right now, Emirates GBR is 2 points behind France for that 3rd and final spot in the grand final in San Francisco. And right now, the French, Stevie, despite what they did towards the yesterday, they look pretty good.
Yeah, very good at Maël Frascari there, the strategist's first event on the boat. As we see with a minute to go, we're already up and running. Very different strategies. New Zealand, Denmark. Denmark looked late to the party. Disappointing day yesterday. A lot of technical problems, and they look well out of position right now. Australia, typically first to turn back. They love to control the start. So for me, Australia's got good control, but it could be New Zealand with this timed run in behind everyone that lined things up well. 35 seconds to go. People have played their cards, and we're looking to make things happen. And Britain, Great Britain, they're only just on our screen. They really are out of position. 27 seconds to go. Australia turns the boat down. He looks to accelerate across the fleet. Start line's very close. Whole fleet close in. New Zealand and Australia well positioned at the moment, but it's going to be a case of getting the acceleration right. There's the pole position. Now the French have blocked off New Zealand. Aggressive by De La Pierre. What's that going to do? Opening a door potentially for Great Britain to dive in at the end. 5 seconds to go. How's the timing on the line? Oh, it's perfect from Australia there, and the Australians are going to be so fast with a better angle to Mark 1. They should lead the fleet away.
Race number 4 is off and running here at the ITM New Zealand Sail Grand Prix Christchurch, and it is the Aussies in desperate need of points. It'll get to Mark 1 first.
Really good start by the Australians there, and Denmark, well, I thought he'd left it too late, but Sehested, by the skin of his teeth, he gets second at Mark 1, and he's got to drop back though. That penalty's going to really hurt him here. Could open the door for Jimmy Spithill. Is the first to turn away as New Zealand. Now they've been reading this course well, and they're looking for space. They move away from the fleet. Look how close that racing is there, Todd. All the crews get to this boundary in front of the fans very quickly. It gets pretty tight on the course there, but quite orderly today. And good news for Australia. Well lined up for gate 2. You've got to think from here they'll try and keep it simple. Straight through the gate with the left turns, my guess for Australia. But where in New Zealand? Have they found more wind? Have Great Britain found more wind on the left-hand side of the screen?
And we've got to point out the hazards in the middle. You cannot go between those markers. You have to go around them. It is the Australians that will get to gate number 2 first. The Americans in a drag race with France. Stevie, who's got the right of way between the Americans and the French?
The French have to keep clear at the moment, but when they hit that yellow circle, the French will be entitled to room on the inside. So it's a tight moment here, but the French have held on. They now have the right of way. Jimmy Spittle must give them space to round.
Gate 2, it's Australia, France, and the USA here in race number 4. It's Super Sunday. Everyone jockeying for points and position.
First to split away, there's Great Britain. Look at those dark blotches in the water. That is seaweed. That's what Tom Slingsby was talking about yesterday. There seems to be a lot of seaweed in the water, so the crews are going to need an eye out for that as well. As Canada, they were on fire yesterday, but this is a disappointing start for Phil Robertson's crew. And Seth Hested, wow, that penalty. Second all the way back to 9th. What a painful penalty.
Stand by.
On board the Canadians, still calm voices. Phil Robertson, their driver, trying to move them up the ladder. And there you see the leaders right now. Australia out in front, Great Britain now in 3rd, France in 2nd. USA now has moved up to 2nd place, so great run for the Americans and Jimmy Spithill.
Look at the angle Great Britain's having to sail here. They happen to avoid that no-go zone, and he's sailing. He's not making any progress up the course. What a mistake by the British crew. They've got to go all the way around that post. Disaster. And right now, New Zealand, they've got space, and they're stretching away.
Still seeing the best speeds here by the Australian team. 55 kilometers per hour averaging up this leg here. Definitely no seaweed on those rudders today.
Americans having to dip behind the French. And that will cost them as New Zealand now inherits 3rd place. The Americans dropping back to 4th. This is race 4. We're on leg 3 of 7. One more fleet race to go. And then only the top 3 teams will race in the last race of the day.
At the moment with the things are here.
Just trying to do a bit of avoiding of these weed patches. It's coming down a bit lower.
His lesson from yesterday by the look of it, trying to avoid that weed. As we see now the French up to 2nd. Again, they found some space and they've got plenty of speed. But New Zealand, top of our screen there with Great Britain, they've got the right of way. Jimmy Spittle needs to be confident he's clear ahead here.
52 kilometers an hour for the Americans. They sit in 3rd. Everyone chasing the Australians. And remember, Australia finished in 9th place to wrap up yesterday. But they did have 2 first good races, going 4 and 2.
100% fly time at the moment for the top 3 teams. Australia still leading the way with speed, 52 kilometers an hour versus France, slightly slower, and the USA a little bit further behind that. But brilliant sailing. They've got a much more open course today, so really able to get those speeds up.
I think it just highlights as well, the boat ahead should always be faster. They're sailing in clear wind, there's no disturbed air, and those Australians know how to make the most of that. Slingsby there, he tacks that yellow line. That's what we call the lay line. That means he should make it to gate 3 with no more changes, but they're struggling to lift the board. Look how slow that board was coming up on board Australia there. Well lined up for gate 3, and if we go back to yesterday, Todd, the position at gate 3 was pretty definitive, so it'll be interesting how that plays out from here.
Constant comms across the board on board Australia. They are the 2-time reigning and defending champions of SailGP, trying to make it the 3-peat here. Can they hold off the Kiwis and the French?
Really nice rounding there. As we can see, it's really tight here coming into gate 3. Great Britain, USA are close, and Switzerland are going to have the right of way. Jimmy Spittle and USA needs to keep clear. New Zealand up to 2nd. The French just sneak round 3rd, and it's so tight in at the top here. Ainsley tries to dive inside the US. Oh, it was tight. I think they all negotiated that really quite well through that moment there, but the USA must keep clear of Ben Ainsley's Great Britain here. And back in the pack, Canada 8th, Spain 7th.
On leg 4 of 7, let's go down on the water and Lisa Darmanin.
Well, Todd, because of the wind direction, it is more consistent across the course, but the teams had no practice to figure out this racetrack. But what I'm seeing right now is there's a beautiful wind funnel along the shore where that crowd is, so there are big gains to be made out there. It's going to be a tough day if you're not out in front to navigate between the boats and those pylons.
So everyone right now chasing Australia. There you see their lead is over 300 meters. And it is the Kiwis that are starting to reel them in, Stevie. How about that? If they can get in touch with them, we'll have ourselves a head-to-head matchup between Australia and New Zealand.
I mean, leg 4 of 7, that's a massive lead for Slingsby here. I don't see him letting this slip, but they split at the top, and there was a gain to the people on the crowd, and that's probably reassuring for Lisa.
Throwing back to that last leg, we can see that the Aussies and Kiwis were neck and neck with pace, both averaging 50k an hour, but the Aussies were doing less distance again, so making gains all the time.
We've seen this happen before with Australia having a bad race, and they come back and put on a stellar performance just to get into that final. Stevie, we know what happens when you get Australia into a 3-boat race. They're always the odds-on favorite.
They are, but generally speaking, the Kiwi boat's been fast here as we see the French and New Zealand. France has the right of way. What does Burling do? He chooses to play the safe option, doesn't push it. He's going to split left. He'll have clear wind on a left turn here, but the French, Quentin de Lapierre's going nowhere. They're sailing that boat very, very fast. USA and Switzerland, so close here. Wow, that was such a late manoeuvre here.
This is the umpires. Penalty USA relative Switzerland. Port tack boat not keeping clear.
So he needs to drop back behind the Swiss here, Jimmy Spittle. That was such a late manoeuvre, a bit too aggressive right there. As we see on the far side of the course, New Zealand and Great Britain, they've split away. Can they find a bit more wind and chase down those Australians?
So they'll make their way up to gate number 5, then they'll come back down, and then it'll be a short blast to the finish line with Australia looking to pick up valuable points here in race number 4. They are the 2-time reigning and defending champions, and Tom Slingsby said before the start of racing yesterday, there's nothing the Australians love to do to come to Kiwi waters and beat them.
260-meter lead for Australia there, and it just keeps growing. 270 now.
Good game for New Zealand versus France here. New Zealand have the right of way. They were behind France at the last gate. Now they move back ahead. So slight gain to New Zealand, but there's not a lot of difference whether you go to the left of the course or to the right of the course where the French are now. So really, it's down to the execution of the manoeuvres at this stage. And Great Britain, Emirates Great Britain, really needs to pass the French here in that battle for the top 3 places.
Great shot of New Zealand. Emirates GBR right behind them.
Just pushing so high, you saw the boat wobble and slip. That was just because they got a little bit high out of the water. They start to lose grip and the boat slides sideways. But it just shows how hard Burling's wanting to push things. But the Australians have slowed right down on the top of screen. They've got a big, big lead, so there won't be any panic yet.
So that lead now under 200 meters, which was closer to 300, but they are on leg 5 of 7. So it'll be one more leg once they get through this gate number 5 down and then back up to the finish line.
New Zealand and France, it's going to be tight here. Well, they're just absolutely tied together on a piece of string, really. Tight cross. New Zealand must be safely across. It's really tight again. Be interesting whether the French decide to protest here. I think it was probably okay, but we'll hear maybe from Craig Mitchell at some stage. Nothing yet. I think he was clear ahead on board New Zealand there, and still Australia. They're stretching that lead again. Back into good breeze, sailing fast.
Constant communications on board Australia as Tom Slingsby's asking his tactician to keep an eye on traffic about. So he already knows that it's going to be New Zealand and GBR as they make this turn to the right-hand side.
This is the final downwind leg here. Downwind, they turn away. Look at the acceleration there, up to 75. There's so much less drag when you're going downwind. The boat just goes a lot faster. Potentially just 1 or 2 manoeuvres left. And again, New Zealand and France absolutely neck and neck. Right of way with the New Zealand boat here. If the French stay inside that circle, oh my word. Great move by de Lapierre. It's so tight, but they're going to split away from each other. And New Zealand, well, that was the favoured way to turn left. Good news for the Kiwi crew at this point, but he's got to watch out for Denmark here. So close. Wow.
It's crucial here for the French team not to make any mistakes. By placing a place ahead of the British team, it really helps them in this battle for the final. At the moment, with these current results, you would see New Zealand Great Britain and France all within 2 points of each other going into race 5.
And remember, it's only the top 3 teams that will race in the final race of the day. Australia doing themselves a solid right now as they lead with a huge margin. New Zealand sits in second, France in third, and Great Britain trying to make gains. The Americans, Stevie, they were up into 4th, and then they got that penalty on Switzerland, which has dropped them back to 6th.
Yeah, I mean, the standard's so high now that if you make a mistake and you get a penalty, it's just too costly. We saw the Australians here. They've done a really nice job in this race. That should put them right back in the hunt for the overalls. I think a 2nd place for New Zealand will nearly definitely put them in the final already. They were nearly 7 points ahead already here. So that's good news for the New Zealand fans on the shoreline there. But the French, they're charging down. Has he got the line right into this final turning, Mark? It's going to be really close at the bottom. Potentially a last-minute dive in from De La Pierre. Yep. He has the right of way. New Zealand must let him in there. Oh la la! So close, but France, can they stay on the foils? It's going to be a sprint to the finish. The French must keep clear of New Zealand.
As they make a turn to the finish line with Australia already in the winner's circle, and France goes a little bit wide.
France.
Oh, France does get a penalty. So Australia gets the win in race 4. The Kiwis hold on for 2nd, and France now an opportunity wasted.
Well, and there could be another boat coming, and the French haven't finished yet. I think they're going to sneak across in 3rd, but Great Britain was there. It's going to be a photo finish. Well, I don't want to call that one. Potentially, GBR got there before the French. I'm not sure. That was so close on the line. And what a result for Diego Botín and his Spanish crew in 4th. Brilliant result by the new driver on Spain there. Great job. Sorry, 5th place for the Spanish. My mistake. Canada coming home there just ahead of Denmark. Wow, that was a really close finish, and that's going to have done some serious changes on the overalls.
Coming up on 1:15 to go, this is race number 5 of the ITM New Zealand Sail Grand Prix here in Christchurch. Todd Harris, Stevie Morrison, and Emily Nagel as we get ready, and this is going to be a big race to see who gets into the grand final and the final race here on Super Sunday.
Go, final minute, and we saw how small this starting box is, so the strategy's very different. Denmark and New Zealand, they look like they're late. We can't even see Great Britain now, but that late approach worked really well last time. Australia, back of the box. They were first at Mark 1 last time. He seemed to have unlocked the code of the start there, and he's in a nice position now in Australia. I think it's going to be Denmark, Great Britain and Australia with good control of their starting strategies at the moment. 33 seconds to go as the boats all line up now.
That's the umpires. Penalty USA relative Switzerland.
Oh, that's an unforced error. They're going to need to be dropping back behind the Swiss at the start. The French, we're hearing rumours of a compromised steering system. That would be bad news for De La Pierre. He's down towards the controlling end of the line though. Great Britain nicely positioned. Diego Botín on Spain. It's going to be either end of the line, I think, for me, that's going to be good. Great Britain are controlling things well. Will the Spanish load it up and come charging in at the top of the line? Here they go. That's a great start by Australia, but look, left of screen, Great Britain and France in that battle for the final. Ainsley went really aggressive at the French, tried to put a penalty on them, but what he's done is put himself at the back of the fleet. Not a great bit of news for the Great Britain team at the moment as Australia drive towards Mark 1.
At Mark 1, it is the 2-time reigning and defending champion Aussies. They need the points, and they are in the driver's seat right now. Everyone else battling. New Zealand has put themselves in a great position. Can they hold off the rest of the fleet? Keep your eye on France and Great Britain. That's the battle.
Australia absolutely on fire out the blocks here. Slingsby really reading these starts well. It's tight in the pack. New Zealand are well positioned, and Great Britain, sure enough, first to split away. They've got to make something happen from here. But Australia, they're looking good to get themselves into the final as it gets a bit loose on board the Spanish boat.
Diego Botín, only his 2nd race as the skipper for Spain SailGP. So it's Australia, Switzerland, New Zealand, and Spain, your top 4 as they head to Gate 2.
Straight in for Australia here, Todd. They look in good shape. They're sailing the boat fast. They're confident in the boat. It's going to be tight for second. New Zealand and Switzerland. If the New Zealand team are overlapped, I think they are. They're going to be able to sneak round inside. That would almost definitely line up two of our finalists, and it's going to be a matter of who can move back through the fleet. Canada, a better performance here by Phil Robertson. As Ainsley on board Great Britain, well, he's got to give room to the Danes, but crucially, he's ahead of the French.
Can I get past the obstructive?
So this side of the course, a lot of action with some of the main components of those battling for those spots that Emily talked about. You've got Emirates GBR, you've got France, and you've got Canada.
Aggressive manoeuvre by the French, trying to split away from the British.
We're watching the British battle the French, but we can't forget that Canada are in the race for this as well. And currently, this would see Canada beating the British team to that final race.
I think you've got a busy few minutes ahead of you, Emily. There we go. Look how tight that is. You're going to need to stay on top of these points as Jimmy Spittle's in the mix, but the Canadian boat's going fast. Australia and New Zealand, they're off down the road. They look in good shape. But what a battle it's going to be for that final place in the final.
I want to come back to Emily really quickly. What's the tiebreaker, though, if they're all both on 34 points?
So it's whoever finishes first in the most recent race. So in this case, Canada would go through.
Oh, would that just be the worst news for the Great Britain team? That is basically emblematic of their season here in season 3.
Well, it's been little moments, but I think really it's about them against France in the overall. So if he can get a point back on the overall, that would be good news. But without doubt, Ainsley and his Emirates GB team are going to want to find a place in the final to give themselves the shot of the victory.
Right. Leg 3 of 7. This is the final fleet race before the final. It's the Australians, Canada, and New Zealand, 1, 2, and 3. And those would be the 3 boats going into the final if it stays like this.
Can we get one of them from here?
One in it right turn.
The Canadians think they've got themselves in a good position at the moment. They've got the right of way against the United States. Jimmy Spittle trying to force it across just ahead. And well, Australia and New Zealand, they seem to be doing synchronised sailing at the moment, both manoeuvring at the same time. But it's the Canadians moving through the finish quickly at the moment. And Emirates GBR, well, they're stuck in the pack there. But crucially, perhaps at this moment, still ahead of the French.
Stand by.
It's so tight, Tom.
Let's take it down to the water. And Lisa Dorman.
I'm lane 3.
Well, I think it's the crosses that are really making this racing. I haven't seen racing this close across the whole fleet for the whole season. I think if you are able to cross in front of another boat, it could mean hundreds of meters on that downwind leg. So every meter is counting out here.
Race number 5. It is Australia out in front, New Zealand in second. The Americans are in third.
So hard to read the Americans at the moment, Todd. I mean, they didn't look great in the last race, and now they look fast as anybody on this race course. Up to third, great upwind leg by Jimmy Spittle, but Tom Slingsby and his Australian crew, well, we know how important this gate 3 is. The near gate, as we can see on our screen here, it's so important in terms of holding their position. But Jimmy Spittle, he's judged the mark approach perfectly. Could be through to second, squeezing inside New Zealand as Burling chooses to split the course and sail away.
I think Jimmy Spithill will be the first one to say their consistency has not been what it needed to be in New Zealand. 8, 5, 4, and a 9.
And here we go, another crucial split, Todd. We're on board the French. The French are turning right. And look, Ainsley in 5th at the moment, but he's turning left. He's opened the door for Quentin de la Pierre, who's picked the breeze right.
It is still Canada, though, one position ahead of Great Britain. France with problems.
Look at that, they flew too high as they turned away there. Perhaps that's the steering issue. Look at de la Pierre, furious in the background. The boat jumped too high out of the water and crashed down. Could be a technical issue, doesn't matter, but they're just so low on the water. Back to 8th place here, that's disaster.
This hurts the French team, but it doesn't change currently what we're seeing for going through to the final. This would still see Canada making that final 3rd spot.
So Canada is really the position you need to watch. They are in 4th, 1 spot ahead of Great Britain. Listen to this one more time.
Here we go, he turns away, watch for the boat getting a bit high out of the water, left-hand side of screen. Look, the rudder just came out, the boat flew too high. Oh, just too aggressive as they turned the boat away. Couldn't really see a fault in the operating system there. More of a user error, just trying to push too hard.
Back to live racing. It is still Australia out in front, but the Kiwis are making massive gains here. They are in 2nd place. Really doesn't matter because they are pretty much locked into that final. The Americans in 3rd, and the battle really is 4th and 5th. If the Canadians could stay ahead of Great Britain, Emily, check my math, they would go through.
Exactly. Nothing else needed to be said there.
Gate number 4.
Good job someone can keep up with what's happening out here, Todd, at the minute, that is for sure. But anyway, right turn for Australia. Expect Burling to take a left turn and see if he can give a little challenge to the Australian crew. But whatever they did to that boat overnight, the Roo is a rocket ship today, as we see USA and Canada coming into this gate. They're going to have the British breathing down their neck, but Ainsley, he needs to make something happen on this next upwind leg. He really, really needs to be in the final here.
And they split the course, so Canada follows the USA. Great Britain goes to the other side. Remember, it's between Canada and Great Britain right now. And Stevie, is there a scenario in which the Americans could help Canada or Great Britain if they get in between?
Not really, it's all about the British getting past the Canadians, but the US could help the Canadians by the fact that Canada were having to follow the United States out. If ever you're following another boat, you're getting turbulent, disturbed wind, you're just going to be slower.
Currently, we've got breeze fairly equal across the course, so let's keep focused on Canada and the British as they come back together now. Both seeing about 25 kilometers an hour of breeze. Canadians look like they've got this cross for now. The British came off the foils in that last maneuver.
Yeah, wind's turned left as well here. You can see the Canadians are nearly sailing straight up our ladder lines. The wind shifted to the left, and there you go. Two-time world match race champion Phil Robertson. He knows what he needs to do. Perhaps he's got a link to Emily Nagold's spreadsheet. We're going to follow that. That's a big lead, nearly 120 metres ahead, and there's not a lot of time left here for Ainsley to make a move.
And Stevie, you know on board Emirates GBR, they've done the math. They know exactly what they need to do.
So we've got to get past one of these boats. We've got to get past Canada, probably.
You know?
No,
Yep,
probably there. He's got the maths going on. He's got to find some boat speed here. Canada have positioned themselves perfectly here to lock this race down. Ainsley's only hope is that they manage to find an absolute magic extra gear. Look, they turn, Canada turns. Classic one-on-one racing here from Phil Robertson. It's a race within a race, really. He's genuinely worried about nothing else other than staying ahead of the British boat right now. A little bit of comms on board, and Chris Draper, the wing trimmer, some serious intensity in his voice, and Phil Robertson, surprisingly,
Very
sounded pretty calm.
They're leading now 150.
Going away at the moment. That Canadian boat's going fast through the water at the moment. Britain, the Great British Emirates, Great Britain, they're stuck in traffic. Look, the Swiss have got past them. Swiss starting to find a bit of form, but the French, well, they're way out the back. And talk about way out in front. This Australian boat, what have they done overnight to it? It's going so fast through the water. Clearly the motivation they needed has been found.
They finished in 9th in the last race yesterday. Here they are on a tear. They won race number 4. They're on the way to winning race number 5 to punch their ticket into the final. New Zealand should be in the final as well. The big battle between Canada and Great Britain, currently 4th and 6th on the course.
And there it is, the race to the final, coming up to the finish now. And the Canadians could still have this.
In good shape to me. It's going to take a big mistake for the Canadians here to not make the final. And yeah, we might have to go down to Lisa at some stage and find out if she knows any magic tricks those Australians did do to the boat, because it's going well. But look at the gains the Canadians have made on this upwind leg. Phil Robertson and his crew there, Isabella Patold, the strategist, back right-hand side. She's picked a nice way up this course, and that's a big lead. It's going to take a real big error from the Canadians for the British to have any hope.
Almost 400 meters is the lead from Australia to the Americans, who now have ended in 2nd place. It really doesn't matter. The Kiwis have the points. They're in 3rd. The real battle is between Canada and Great Britain. And right now, Great Britain, Stevie, going the wrong direction.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big lead, and you can just hear the voice. We can hear the voice of Chris Draper, a little insight. He just said, it's just us and the course. So stay in the boat, focus on doing the simple things right, then there'll be nothing that the British can do. And in fact, look, the British have dropped back behind the Swiss here even. Disaster for them. As we see Jimmy Spittle, it's too little too late for the United States crew. They might be ahead of New Zealand, but it's going to be New Zealand and Australia, the class of the field, and then Phil Robertson's Canada. Well, it's been a while since we saw them in the final. Could be just the tonic for them. Penalty on the Swiss there. I'm guessing that's a boundary penalty. Couldn't see. That'll just be a 20-metre loss if it was.
So race number 5 goes the way of Australia as the Australians come out swinging on Super Sunday. They went back-to-back races to punch their ticket into the big final. The Americans will come through and grab second, so Jimmy Spithill will end his time here in New Zealand on a high note. They were looking for that speed earlier today, starting off the day with a 9th. They'll come back in the second race and get a second. And the Kiwis already pretty much a lock for the final. They'll finish in 3rd. So we know for sure it'll be Australia, it'll be New Zealand, and here it is, Canada coming in 4th place, and that will give them the points, Stevie, they need to get into the big final.
Huge performance by Phil Robertson and that Canadian crew. I mean, gotta love it. He loves it, is what he says, and you've got to give them full kudos. They've done a brilliant job. They've struggled for form in the mid-season, but look what it means. They're back in business, and they're really enjoying that.
Switzerland gets 5th place. Great Britain will come through, and this is going to be major disappointment for Ben Ainslie and Emirates GBR as they finish in 6th.
They are ahead of the French, which I think puts them ahead of the French in the regatta overall, so massive disappointment to miss the final, but they will be closer in the overall season points in that battle for the grand final in San Fran, but got to be an opportunity missed. Same for the French, really. Both these teams have seemed to feel the pressure and potentially going to be losing points on New Zealand.
And when France needed the points most, they finished with a 3rd, and they backed it up with a 7th in race number 5, so disappointment for them. Everyone getting into position here in the start box.
7 legs. The axis is 080. Wind is approximately 29 kilometers per hour.
That's race manager Melanie Roberts spelling things out. So, Stevie, here we go. Everyone going to play a little cat and mouse here. Who's going to blink first?
Oh, I can't wait. This, for me, is a dry... This is the last chance for New Zealand and Australia to land a punch on each other before the grand final in San Fran. Looks like they're going to be in it now. And, well, can Canada come and spoil the party? But I'm expecting a big, big fight between Australia and New Zealand.
Under a minute to go before the start of the final here at the ITM New Zealand Sail Grand Prix Christchurch. The Kiwis a little late coming in.
I think they're just trying to set it up to make sure they can line themselves up relative to the other boat. He's letting the other teams make the first move. Australia likes that, but Burling likes to be a bit more reactionary. He's going to see what they set up, see what opportunity presents itself for him with 35 seconds to go. What's the next move? Pole position, that blue mark on our line to the right of the screen, that's the optimum place to start on the line. I think that could be a little bit late by New Zealand, though. They're turning back. They're going to look to push Australia back towards the start line. We've got a pusher and a blocker here. It's going to be tight. Canada are well positioned. New Zealand need to get a move on here. They've got to start rolling over the top with 10 seconds to go. It's going to be a straight line drag race in. Canada are well positioned, but New Zealand are coming in hot. 3 seconds to go. Watch for the line to turn white. Blanket start there, and I think it's going to be a case of can New Zealand be fast enough? They're going to struggle to get round the top, but if anyone can do it, the Kiwis can do it. They've got to keep clear of Australia, and Canada are hanging on the inside.
And at mark number 1, it is all on here in the big final at the ITM New Zealand Sail Grand Prix Christchurch. And it is the Canadians out in front. Stevie, Emily, this would be their first final victory if they could pull it off.
Great start by Phil Robertson under pressure. He's in a good position. There's gate 2. Canada set up for the first turn here, and New Zealand are going to be held out by Australia. This is going to come down to the accuracy of manoeuvres here. It's so close. The Canadians are probably not quite as quick as Australia, but there they go. Both boats turn simultaneously, and it's another sprint. Australia on the inside. Canada have the right of way. Australia must keep clear, but that's a boundary there. He can't push the Australians into that. He's going to have to let them have room.
Go and get him here.
Here we go. Canada's going to be aggressive now. Watch out, Australia must keep clear. Another aggressive move from Robertson.
Disappointing speeds from the Kiwis at the moment. 10 kilometers an hour slower than the other 2 teams.
Just sailing in that disturbed wind for New Zealand being at the back of the pack. I would imagine a right turn here for New Zealand. Canada, great move by Robertson, really aggressive. And Australia are pushed back to 3rd. New Zealand dive in, but Canada are a little bit slow as they turn up. All 3 boats are making some small mistakes. Canada turn left, they get the first pick, and it's Burling's New Zealand up to 2nd.
Burling calling for the high mode. The Aussies right behind him.
He's trying to force the Australians out of his way at the moment. Until he gets to the boundary, the New Zealand boat can't turn because the right-of-way would be with Australia. As he gets to the boundary, he'll get protection, but Canada, they're sprinting away on the other side, able to sail fast.
On the other side of the course, Canada are doing 55, 56 kilometers an hour. Meanwhile, on the left-hand side of the course, we have the Kiwis and Aussies doing 40 kilometers an hour. A huge difference.
This is the umpires. Boundary penalty, Australia.
He's got to lose 20 metres there, too aggressive. That would kind of felt it might happen. They're trying to land punches on each other. They've gone slow. It's opened the door for Canada. But now, New Zealand are in space. They're 100 metres behind the Canadians. They've got some chasing to do.
In the grand scheme of things, New Zealand and Australia can give away points to Canada. They could let the Canadians get this first overall win for their program. Canada sits in 7th place overall on 49 points. Australia has 76, New Zealand 64. But, Stevie, you know these two guys. Pete Burling, Tom Slingsby, they've raced against each other, and they're not going to give each other an inch.
Todd, I've not spent a lot of time in New Zealand, but I can tell you one thing. Kiwis don't like losing in New Zealand. This is their home turf. They want to win for the fans. They want to win for themselves. And they're not going to like seeing Canada out in front. But also, let's not forget Phil Robertson. Yes, he's driving the Canadian boat. He's got a Kiwi accent too.
So Robertson, who used to sail for Spain, New Zealand by birth, and here he is sailing for Canada, trying to give them their first SailGP Grand Final victory.
Look at the lead come down, 60 metres, it was 100 metres, so the New Zealand boat is chipping away, but once again, Robertson lines them up. He's going the same way. He's limiting the opportunity for the Kiwis to overtake. They're going to have to use that boat speed that we saw on day one.
By staying close to the other teams, he's making sure he's in all the same wind shifts. So that means if the Kiwis get different shift, Phil will get that as well, and they can cover, stay close, minimize losses.
Phil Robertson and Canada out in front, leg 3 of 7. This is the big final from Christchurch as we go down on the water, and Lisa Darmanin.
Well, Phil has the opportunity to just keep it simple. He'll probably do a left turn at this top gate, and the Kiwis will have to do another manoeuvre, while Australia may lay one and in to this left turn. So it's all on for this next cross.
So at gate number 3, it is Canada. Phil Robertson, the driver. 2nd place belongs to the Kiwis and Peter Burling. And 3rd place, Australia, the 2-time reigning and defending champions. And 1st place overall after 9 events, Australia.
Tight for those two back there. Australia went out of bounds twice on this upwind leg, but those penalties haven't really hurt them. And here we go. 12 seconds, the advantage for Canada over New Zealand. That's a slight stretch from where it was at gate 2. We're halfway through the race, and now the fleet's spread out a little bit. It's a little bit more of a battle of boat speed, but the Canadians, no problem with their boat speed right now. Look at that, 74 kilometers an hour, stretching out, and New Zealand, they're just struggling to keep pace with the Canadians.
They're already talking about the next gate. Stevie and Emily, they're looking for something.
Throwing back to that previous leg of the race, we can see that the Canadians averaged 53.4 kilometers an hour, while both Kiwis and Aussies were too busy battling each other out, and a lot slower. It's less than 50.
Oh, Canada! Look at the jibe, Todd. They've fallen off. They turned the boat. They flew too high. They're back on the foils now, but they're going to have lost distance, and they're going to be rattled. Can they recompose themselves? Opportunity now for the New Zealand boat to shut the distance, but it sounds like they've got it back under control on Canada, maybe just in time.
So that lead now down to 100 meters, and it is New Zealand breathing down the neck of the Canadians.
It's going to be tight here. We're back under 100 meters. We're going to have to be thinking New Zealand will want to try and split away from the Canadians here. If Canada turns right, you can be sure New Zealand will want to turn left.
And they're going to follow him.
They're going to follow. I'm surprised at that. Must be really feeling there's a big advantage, or perhaps he just thinks by breathing down their neck, he can force another mistake.
Uncharacteristic mistake by the Canadians. They were almost 300 meters clear, and now their lead down to 67 meters.
There you go, first to turn away, New Zealand. Obviously like the advantage there. Australia, they match manoeuvres with the Kiwis, and Canada, well, they're sailing well in towards the shore here. Can they clear that boundary? The 3 posts we see there, they're not allowed to sail between that. If Canada has to dip round the edge of that red one, I think this could be a mistake by the Canadians.
And look at the speed difference.
Yeah, they're so fast. That's because Canada are trying to get above this green post to our left here. He's sailing closer to the wind, so he's going slower, but he's going to save himself some distance. Leads come down. When they turn in a minute, New Zealand will have the right of way. This could be a race, an event-defining moment here. Canada have given the opportunity to New Zealand, and New Zealand are on fire.
And New Zealand has overtaken the Canadians, their first lead of the race. So it's New Zealand, Canada, and Australia here in the final race, leg 5 of 7.
We've got those average speeds there. Canadians marginally faster at the moment, but we did see them lose all of that distance from avoiding the obstruction.
Yeah, here we go, right of way with New Zealand. Canada must be confident they're across. If they cross, they'll have control back as we get towards the top of the course. Well, that was a big save by the Canadians, but this is going to be really tight at the top of the course. Can't afford any more mistakes here.
Phil Robertson, the top of your screen. Canadians currently in first place. Peter Burling sitting in second with the homestanding Kiwis.
There on the top left, we've got the distance to lead us, 16 meters, and dropping now towards Canada.
It's really tight, but when they come back together, it'll be Canada with the right of way here until they get close to the gate. Australia, they've dropped back. I think they're out of this at this point. It's all about, can the Kiwis put enough pressure on Canada and find a chink in that Canadian armour? Turn there, they're neck and neck on the ladder lines. Canada have the right of way. Canada set up, they're going to try and block the New Zealand boat here. Here we go. Great manoeuvre by the Canadians, but how are they lined up for the gate here? It looks tight. New Zealand are quicker. So tight.
It's going to be the first to the yellow circle. Who's going to get there first and control it? It looks like Canada's opting for that right-hand side. Does Peter Burling split with him?
Canada will have the inside, but they are slow at this point in time. New Zealand are going to look to try and slingshot down inside and control the next manoeuvre. Here we go. Follows, he's going to try and pressure him with the manoeuvres. This is the final downwind leg here, Todd, and Canada have done a brilliant job of hanging in. One last roll of the dice for Australia, but I think, here we go. There go New Zealand, first to turn away. It's now just a drag race.
And the wind up to 37 kilometers an hour across the course.
Just perfect sailing conditions, Todd. Basically, we're going to see 2 more turns down at the bottom of the course here. Another mistake by Canada.
Boundary penalty, Canada.
Oh, no! That could be, they're going to have to lose 20 metres relative to the speed of the New Zealand boat. They're going to have the right of way. This might not be the end of the race for the Canadians, but that's going to really hurt them distance-wise. Here we go, one more manoeuvre for Burling. He wants to own the zone, he just said there. He wants to be right on the inside coming into this mark, and he's going to try and do a handbrake turn inside the Canadians as his final move of the event.
That's the Canadians clear of their penalty there, so foot down, full speed ahead.
Foot down indeed. Here we go. Coming downwind here fast. Which side do they line up on these posts? Can Canada get round? Canada seem to have found an extra bit of wind here. They're going so fast on that Canadian boat. The ladder lines show us neck and neck.
It does look like the Canadians are currently laying that gate.
Canada has the right of way, but do they make it down to the gate in time here?
It's all going to come down to this at gate number 6. Then it'll be the turn to the finish line. It'll either be Canada with their driver, Phil Robertson, a Kiwi, or New Zealand will take it on home waters, and it's Canada cutting in front. So despite the penalty, they made up the ground, and it'll be a right-hand turn. And how about this? A little history made in Christchurch, as Phil Robertson will steer Canada to their first SailGP victory, and it comes at the ITM New Zealand Sail Grand Prix.
What a job by the Canadians. Wow, clinical there.
Just when it looked looked like New Zealand had put the pressure on and forced them into a penalty. It is Canada and Phil Robertson that get the job done. The Kiwis hold on for second place, and Australia will come in on third.
Getting right to the edge of the course there. He went a bit wide, but he meant he got past that boundary without doing any more manoeuvres. Absolutely pushing the limits there, Phil Robertson, but that's what he does, and what an amazing performance by this Canadian crew. Great to see them taking their first ever victory.